And we're live.
All right. You ready, Brian?
I'm ready.
Okay. It's like the dollar store version of Friday the 13th your mom bought you because she couldn't tell the difference. We watched Harvest of Fear, which means it's time for another Portland at the Movies.
In a world, in a time, in a land of eternal beauty, all that stands between a city and a disaster, in a city where anything can happen. If you thought you had seen it all.
Look, you guys, this isn't a movie. We're not chasing after Freddy or Jason.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Portland at the Movies. I am one of your hosts, Todd Werkhoven, and with me, as always, is Mark Middleton. How are you, Mark?
I'm great, Todd.
Good, and of course, we have Brian, the Unipiper kid. How are you, Brian?
Doing well, Todd. I got to give you a compliment for that soundbite there. That pretty much sums up this whole experience.
Yes, and the only quote I can find in the whole movie that was worth putting in the opening thing. But before we get into 2004's Harvest of Fear, Pride of Estacada, we're going to do a little bit of news catch up about the show and about some things coming up. So Brian, why don't you take that?
Sure. So this is a very cool story that happened this week. So I want to give a shout out to Miss Amy Wade. She's a local Portland author, and she wrote the book. You've probably seen it if you've been in any stores like New Seasons or Music Millennium. It's sort of a small, has a yellow border, and it's called PDX Centric. And it's pretty much the guide to the quirky offbeat locales in and around Portland, and there's a whole chapter of that book dedicated to Portland-made movies.
Yes, and it's been very helpful for us too.
Totally,
we've got a lot of overlap so far with that.
She did a lot of research and kind of finding where these movies were filmed and laying out some of the locations, and so it's been a great resource for us. Anyways, she contacted me a couple of weeks ago, saying that hey, I've got this box of movies sitting around from when I was writing the book and doing all this research. If you guys would like to have them, then you're more than welcome to them. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really great. And, life gets in the way and a couple weeks go by. And then I was out this past week one day, and this woman just flags me down. She sees me walking and she's like, hey, it's Amy. I live like a block away. Do you want those movies now?
And you weren't dressed as the Unipiper or anything, were you?
I actually did happen to be dressed as
okay, well, that's helpful then.
I had met her before, so she may have recognized me. Yeah. But anyways, I have that box. I'm just going to pick it up right here, and we'll go through some of the highlights.
Well, part of what came in the box was a couple posters, and there was, you did gift me a Body of Evidence poster with a design I'd never seen before. So that was part of it, but that was a whole box of movies there.
Yeah, so there's probably 20 movies in this box, and there's some really good stuff. There are 2 copies of Total Reality.
I did see that, yes.
Yeah. One is
that way we won't have to fight over it.
One's the PAL and one's the NTSC version.
Oh, nice.
There's a copy of American Beauty. I don't think that was filmed in Portland. That might have just been a miscellaneous stray. But we have now Ironheart.
Oh, wow.
It's a screener copy.
A screener copy.
Yeah.
What?
Very cool. Get this, we have now our very own DVD copy of Unhinged.
Ooh, original uncensored version.
Now it's got comedy narration by quote-unquote the detractors. And one of the detractors is Mr. David Walker.
Of course,
yeah.
David Walker.
When are we going to get him on the show?
I know. He's busy doing Comic-Con and doing a TED Talk yesterday and writing for Marvel and for DC. So Portland at the Movies is probably a little low on his list right
now. But we've got a horror collection, one of those multiple movies
6
packed in there.
movies.
And I think Night of the Demon, does that ring a bell? I think that's the one on here that I think is filmed in Portland.
Huh.
Well, something for next Halloween.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna have a good time going through this box of stuff.
That is awesome.
Yeah, lots of good stuff in here. So
Spiral?
thank you,
Spiral. Yeah,
totally. That one's.
I wanted to watch that one a while ago, but I couldn't find a copy of it. So that solved our problem.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
Thank you,
So
Amy.
yes, thank you, Amy.
Todd, why don't you tell us what the other big news item we have is?
The other big news item is that on November 9 and 10 will be the 2nd annual Portland Podcast Festival organized by Jason Lamb and Sarah and Greg of Fun Employment Radio. And that is coming up. We will be doing another live version, mini version of our show. Camera person, can you line me up? So we should... we had been debating what to do this year. Last year, we were blessed to find a Chuck Norris movie about a week before we were going to do the show. And this time, we were trying to figure out maybe we make a list of great Portland locations. Or
we should back up, because if people are listening to this episode after the last episode, they may be confused because we are not viewing the movie that we said we were going to be watching this week.
Yes, that is also true.
So, Mark, why don't you tell us what happened?
So the movie I picked was called Fade to Black, which is a movie that was filmed in Portland.
Yeah.
There's also apparently like 9 other movies called Fade to Black. And so the one that came up when I looked it up was actually intriguing, and
it was a horror movie.
It was a horror movie.
There's a mime in it.
There was a mime, and it looked fantastic and very on point for a Halloween special. Not filmed in Portland at all. That was entirely a Hollywood movie filmed around the streets of Hollywood with Hollywood actors and all
starring
the things.
Hollywood. The Hollywood sign.
And so we had to scrap that because I didn't do my research before picking the movie. And so instead, today we are going to be discussing Harvest of Fear. And at the Portland Podcasting Festival, we will be...
Are we going to give that away?
Are we giving that away?
I think so. I think we should full on lean into it.
I don't...
you don't think so?
I kind of think we should save it.
all right.
I think there's an opportunity for a grand reveal.
Okay, because it is amazing. Now, you guys have not watched it yet?
I have not watched it yet.
Okay, because I have watched it. Well, full disclosure, we were going to replace this month's movie with that one, the one that we'll be doing for the festival.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely still in the vein of October movies.
Yeah. And so I started watching it about 10 minutes in. I was like,
we got this panicked text from Todd.
I was like, we have made a horrible mistake. We need to be saving this movie for the podcast festival because it is so great.
Live audience worthy.
Yes. And we will be performing our podcast on November 10, the Saturday at Hawthorne Theater. So make sure to go to Portland Podcast Fest, I believe is the URL, and get your tickets because they will go fast. Last year, I don't know if they sold out, but it was
full.
It was
Yeah,
really,
it was
really
at
full.
capacity.
And this year they've expanded to 2 days, right?
Yep. So on the 9th, it'll be at Landmark Saloon, I believe, and the 10th will be at Hawthorne Theater. So I think a total of 25 different podcasts. So yeah, it'll be really cool, and a ton of different. Everyone's got such a different show that they're bringing there, and it'll be really great. So we have got a fantastic movie for that.
Last year, I was really overly impressed by the production quality of the show itself. For being the first year, they really put together a great show, and the quality of the podcast and these 20-minute performances were hilarious and interesting, and
they were all over the board
it wasn't just comedy. It wasn't just there was religious topics and drama, and it was really fantastic.
Sports and technology and all that. So yeah, do check that out. We would love to see you there. So all of that being said, that's what landed us with 2004's Harvest of Fear, which is, I believe, you found off of our list.
The show is only going downhill from this point.
Well, for a movie and we'll get into it, I do have 5 pages of notes on it.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unpack.
To talk about.
Yeah. So, 2004. This was a quote-unquote horror movie filmed outside of Portland, mostly. There's maybe just one scene in Portland.
Maybe. Which is the one in Portland?
There was definitely one shot in Portland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it.
Like 34th and Belmont.
Yeah.
So I saw that in the IMDb, but I don't know where
in the movie.
that was.
Oh, I've got a screenshot.
Oh,
okay.
Surprise!
Yeah. So,
but yeah, most of it was shot in Estacada,
Aurora, and
that's what first caught my attention. The very first, there's like 6 or 7 just establishing shots.
Tommy was so level of establishing shots.
Totally. And it was Aurora.
We get it. It's rural, community.
Look, another train.
And so the train goes right past the really cool antique store in Aurora, Oregon.
Yes.
Mark, can you pull some of this up?
I can.
And so that was weird because that's just a couple miles from my house.
So
And
this-
Aurora's only got like what?
yeah,
How many people in it?
near Aurora is Jervis.
Jervis.
And in Jervis is the what's it called? This
Last Chance
the
Saloon.
Last Chance.
Their nice
Saloon.
exotic dancing sign right underneath it there.
And
I didn't know where that was. Is that downtown Estacada?
I don't know.
I
See, I
think
don't
so.
know that I've ever actually been to Estacada.
I've been to Estacada a few times. I don't recognize that specifically, but I also wasn't looking for that post when I was.
So
was
that's
that?
Aurora right there.
Aurora.
Aurora.
It's funny, but I don't know if they actually did any like acting scenes in Aurora. Or if it
No,
was
and
just
that was
establishing
yeah. There was
shots.
just so that's the other one from Aurora too.
I love that the establishing shots are setting up this location that we never see again.
right. Yeah, a totally different place.
May I
but-
keep going through these, or
Sure. Let's just finish it up.
Let's do exactly what Todd told
What I
us
told us not to do
do.
before the show is to load all of the locations.
You told us
into
not
one-
to cross the streams, Todd.
Here we are.
Gas for less. Ah, yes. Who can forget?
Who can
gas
forget
for less?
So a lot of shacks. Yeah, that's the other. There's the antique mall, which is a really neat shot. It's kind of shrouded in a little bit of fog, and there's a train coming by.
There's a train stopped, and then
Oh, was it?
yeah, it doesn't actually come by. It
At least they got
stops
to turn
there.
the lights on.
Yeah.
Oh, is that because is this a still shot in the movie?
No,
One of the many freeze frames in this movie.
Awkward.
the vehicles pass right in front of the train in this.
Oh, okay.
In this shot,
Okay.
Oh,
it was weird.
Is there-
The old men from the Muppets.
Yes. Well, let's kind of give a wraparound of
Yeah.
this movie. So I mentioned in the opening, it's kind of like Friday the 13th.
Too soon.
The whole conceit is that there's this small town that apparently has a harvest festival that the college kids love, and
it's like spring break.
it's just like spring break
That's
at
what
a
everyone
retirement
keeps-
house
Everyone keeps saying.
with
By
like
the
15
lake.
people there. But yeah, there's a lake there, and so 20 years ago there was a bunch of teenagers murdered. They put someone away for it, and now it's the 20th anniversary, and kids are being murdered again. So that's the setup of this movie.
But are they connected? How do we know that these are connected?
At one point, so this is a tiny town. They never specifically say Estacada, but they keep saying this is a tiny town, and I don't know how many people Estacada
It's
have.
the town of Devil's Lake.
The town of Devil's Lake. Yeah. Should we play? I have.
Let's make it clear so that people have the context as we're talking about. This is
Okay.
a terrible, terrible movie. Like I know we say that on this show a lot, but I mean it sincerely this time.
Okay. I agree it's a terrible movie. I didn't hate it.
No, I didn't hate it either, but on a technical level, on acting,
I turned on it the second viewing is when I started to hate it.
Well, it's probably because it's only 1 hour long. And so with
an hour 26 minutes. You mean?
on my
Which version did you watch?
Did you watch a much better version that was only an hour long?
It was like 1 hour and 6 minutes. I
Did you
thought.
watch Fear of Heart?
Maybe I.
This is an hour and 26.
Okay, never mind. Never mind.
No. I think I know. I think I know what's going on. If you Google "Harvest of
Nah,
Fear" movie, this is not the first movie that comes up because you're probably confusing this with the Nova PBS special
Yes, which is
called
all over
"Harvest of
YouTube.
Fear," which is about I think GMO plants.
Yes.
Is that what you watched?
No,
Mark?
it's not.
This is another episode of the Mark and Todd cast.
This
We're going
was-
to talk about GMOs.
I did download the copy for our podcast.
that we got for Movie Madness.
I must have just misread
You must have just
the slider.
slept through a gigantic portion.
That
of it.
also might be true.
Well, there's some voiceover at the very beginning that really just explicitly sets everything up. So maybe we should kind of listen to that.
Let's
here.
listen to that. Creepy music.
Creepy music as he's driving through all the establishing shots. So this might take a second.
This movie plays creepy music all the time, except for when someone is actually getting killed, and
When
then
it's The Matrix.
and then it turns into like house trance.
Okay, we'll cover that later. I think we stepped on the opening
A
here.
small town.
Here we go.
Devil's Lake. A small town not unlike many others. A small town with a past, a present, and a hope for a future. But in some small towns, the past is more present than one may think. For the people who live in these towns, thoughts of greed, envy, and murder are those kept close to one's own heart.
That doesn't mean anything.
I know, it's that
And
whole...
in Devil's Lake, the secrets of the present may open the wounds of the past.
So, yeah.
I want that man to narrate my life.
I know, he was pretty good, but it does, I think, Mark, beforehand you were making a Waiting for Guffman joke. He does sound like the old, at the play at the end of Waiting for Guffman.
Right.
I didn't see you come in here.
Yeah, exactly.
I like beans.
Exactly. Or like the jamboree, the bear jamboree.
The country bear jamboree. So we go from that immediately to these two teenagers in the woods who
One of the first of many awkward sex scenes.
Yes. Now, you know how they're like you'll in Hollywood you hear she was a dancer, she's a dancer who can act, or she's an actress who can dance. You know, there's that line. This is a girl who is willing to take her top off who can't act. So that's her mix of talent.
She was willing to take her top off.
For a long.
There was so many shots of her.
So it opens with them. There's some excuse for the guy to go away and get something or other. He had to pee, and so she, of course, takes off her top. And they do what they do so many times in this movie, which is the fake scare. Like one of the characters will jump out and scare the other one, which is fine before like murder stuff. But even after everybody's getting killed, people are still like doing that to each other, and I'm like. And read the room, people. You can't just keep doing that.
Too soon.
Too soon. This is during. We're not even past it yet. But she takes off her top and ends up being chased by a masked killer of some sort and just runs around the forest topless for like 2 minutes.
With the Steadicam just 6 inches away.
For an awkwardly long amount of time.
And her poor back, because she was very well endowed. And she's just flopping around in the breeze.
So if you think that for every minute of film, it probably took, an hour to film it?
At least.
She must have been naked in the woods for like...
And it was cold because part of this movie you can see, see people's breaths.
It's clearly nighttime. You know, some movies when they try to do that night for day. This was like the other extreme where they film at night, but they have no additional lighting and you can't see a thing except her headlights.
So I wanted to give her acting really sums up. So here's hearing her boyfriend.
That's great, babe. You should really start a band or something.
Thanks, babe. Thanks, babe. Anyway, so they both end up getting killed, and that then we transition to our main character, Billy. Now, Billy, who sort of looks like Elon Musk, but
Mark says no.
Mark says no. Oh. But he just smirks his way through this entire movie, just with that gross, like...
It's like the guy from that terrible 90s school-based... the blonde from the one where Screech was on.
Saved by the Bell.
Zach Morris.
It's kind of Zach Morris. He's a bro.
Meets Heath Ledger, maybe.
Yeah,
well,
I don't know.
But he just smirks.
Did you notice the production company's logo at the beginning of the film? It says JBA Productions, and their logo is just like this douchey bro-looking dude with his hands in his pockets.
Yeah, I did notice that.
It is just like Bro Dude Productions is
starring Bro Dude.
Starring Bro Dude.
There's a lot of bro dudes. The cop is the
early 2000s. All the ladies have the plucked eyebrow where it's just the one thin line of eyebrow all the way around. That was popular back then. I do have one last clip of the boob girl before.
That's great, babe.
I'm sorry, this is the
You
same.
should really start a band or something.
Thanks, babe. Oh, hold on. She has one more line. So he jumps out to scare her, but it ends up...
This should answer your question.
Oh, I missed
When
it.
she takes her top off.
Yeah. Anyway.
Todd's just going to watch that.
I'm
on
just going to
repeat.
watch that. I'm sorry. Are we doing a podcast here?
It's okay,
I don't
Todd. We
know
get to
where
see it again.
yeah, yes, we do. So they get killed. William the Smirker comes to town, and he is going to intern at the coroner's office.
Yeah, just like his dad.
Just like his dad did 20 years ago. And this is when they really start, like, the whole movie is nothing but red herrings of, like, because it's basically like we're all getting killed one by one. Who did it? And never before have I seen a movie be participant in framing one of the characters in the movie to make us think we all did it, and that's the doctor, because he's constantly like,
I don't think the director ever actually saw another horror movie. He only watched episodes of Scooby-Doo. And that's his frame of reference for making this film. Or it's one of those situations where you take somebody who has never seen a movie before, and then you describe a slasher film to them, and then you're like, okay, go make one.
And then 2 writing credits later, it took 2 people. The story by credit was 2 people for this movie.
I think
Can you
they're
imagine the
brothers.
first draft? The first draft when the first guy wrote it, and he's like
His brother, because they
he's
both had
like,
the same last name.
dude, I've got the movie.
I nailed it.
Check this.
We
out.
don't need to change a thing. The other movie they did see was Psycho, because the moment where the smirking intern walks into the coroner's office, there's a shot of all the taxidermy on the wall, and there's a shot from above, so you see the taxidermy and you see him through it, and like lots of those taxidermy. I'm like, did he just watch Psycho? Or
Yes,
what is
because
happening?
that's what they had to watch in the film school
film
that he was
school.
taking at community college.
That's the day he didn't skip to bro out
have
with
like-
his.
They have like
This Hitchcock guys, they say he's pretty good, so let's just do that.
the mouth shot of the boar.
Yep.
And it's just like,
Totally, it was so
really?
dumb. And then we see, we do see Hootie McBoob again on the coroner's table.
Okay, so when you first watch this movie and you see so much boob within the first 5 minutes, you're like, okay, I know what kind of movie we're in for now, and you think there's going to be boob the rest of the entire movie, but apparently this is the only person they could
Not
get
one.
willing to take
They
their top
really
off.
front-loaded it too.
So they're like, well, let's get our money's worth out of this girl.
So yes, they bring her back for an encore performance as corpse on the slab, and she can't even act that.
Still,
Because she is clear.
the camera is there's like a conversation between Bro Dude and the county coroner, and then the camera just slowly pans towards her boobs on the table.
They did that when they introduced her, when she took off her top initially too in the forest. They slowly panned down, which they were already in frame.
Yeah.
But they panned down anyway. It was
Just waiting for her to be like, hey, my eyes are up here.
hey movie. But she's laying on the slab and she's clearly breathing, which, I'm sure she had to lay there for a long time, and you'd have to do that, but it's like, cut around that. There was no reason, because they were just shooting coverage of
Well,
the
the reason, Todd, was
conversation.
'cause you wanted as much boob and camera for as long as possible, so
But
it's
to cut around the
inevitable.
breathing is what I'm saying. Wait until she exhales and then cut back to her. But she's just breathing up a storm on that slab. So they start.
It was a cold slab, you could tell.
It was a cold slab, much like the cold night. So it sets up the conversation of within the town of, is this, kids are getting killed, is this like 20 years ago?
Is there a connection?
And then we have one of our favorite local actors, whose name I didn't write down.
Kurt Hansen.
Kurt Hansen, who shows up, and he looks like a mix between like Craig T. Nelson and Jesse the Body Ventura. Kind of has the longer hair.
He played the evil land developers in The Goonies.
Yes.
Which I feel like I
Oh, right.
end up saying that line every
Because he's
episode.
in all of our other movies too. But he is the retired cop of the town, right? So he was the one in charge 20 years ago.
The retired sheriff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he starts asking questions right away, but everybody poo-poos him and tells him to stay
so
retired.
20 years ago, they had locked up pretty much the town scapegoat that they
Right.
said was responsible for these murders, but then everyone is like, it probably wasn't him.
Right.
Or,
And the scapegoat was the son of the redneck guy that hangs out on his porch with his other kid.
who also happens to be our film's narrator.
The old man or the kid?
The old man.
Okay, so that's who was doing
The narration.
Got
Well, I didn't see it come in here.
Because throughout the movie, he also provides the cryptic clues
he is.
for no apparent reason.
And why are they so dirty? It's him and his son that all they do is sit on the porch and, like, I get it, they're like gross, you know, hill
Local
people.
yokels.
Yeah, but they're just constantly filthy and they're not doing anything.
I
They're just
loved
sitting there.
the son. He would just always give him something to do, and so he's just like whittling away on a stick.
Did you see what he was doing in the very last?
Yes, that was amazing.
So he whittles a stick and then
Then the next scene, he has this like dirty doll, and then he has like a comb, and he's combing the
Right, just,
doll's
like,
hair, giving it like a fro.
frantically combing the doll's hair. So anyway, yeah, there are local color and voices of wisdom, I guess, and they're also sort of framed by the movie as possible, the ones that are possibly behind it because they've been their other son or his was sent away because of it. And then we go back to two other teenagers on like makeout point or whatever in their car.
Yeah, for another awkward sex scene. It's kind of like, you're at a party and you're sitting on a couch, and then the two people sitting on the couch right beside you just start making out.
That couple was in this movie because later at the party scene I wrote, makeout couple is so gross because everybody else is talking and they're just in the middle of the party and
you
they're
just kind of feel dirty, like you're like, I'm uncomfortable.
this is making me uncomfortable.
And then they kept, I think usually maybe when there's a love scene in a movie, they will dub the sounds, but these were like gross mouth noises.
Yeah.
I hate those noises. They're so awful. But so they start making out in their car and we see the killer again. And I was really confused as to what happened next. So there's a glass bottle that fell out that they were drinking out of, and the killer picks up the glass bottle. Then we see the passenger side.
The girl gets pulled out of the window.
Not all the way.
Not all the way, just enough
Up
to
to her neck.
slash her neck.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I was tracking that.
We can agree there.
And then the boyfriend tries to get his keys so that he can get out of there, and he gets stabbed with the glass.
Okay, so that's what the movie implies, but here's what really happens in the movie. So
Wait, how do you know this, Todd?
how do I know? Because I watched it again and I was like, what is happening in this
Frame
scene?
by
Because it
frame.
didn't make any sense. So yeah, the girl gets pulled out by her hair kind of up to her neck out the window, and it looks like she gets her, like everyone else in this movie, gets her throat cut. Then it just shows hair draped against a car door.
That's
like,
her
okay,
head
so
hanging
that's
out.
her.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we only see hair.
Yeah.
Right. Long hair.
It
Bloody
cuts
hair.
back to the guy bloody hair, trying to, I don't know why he took his keys out of his car. They were not going anywhere, so he's fumbling with his keys. It cuts back to the passenger seat, and she's not there. The girl is not there anymore, nor is her body. The front car seat is empty. Cuts back to the guy with the keys, then cuts back to the shot of just the bloody hair against the car door, and then it the driver gets his throat cut, and it shows a freeze frame of his head up against the steering wheel.
I love the freeze frames in this movie.
It is terrible because you can tell it's not a still shot.
It's-
It is a video freeze frame.
And they do that at least 6 different times throughout this movie.
And the end, it just abruptly ends with a freeze frame of like them going through a yellow light, which I thought was strange.
It's so weird.
So,
I have one, and then
okay.
so that scene ends, and then the next day, or whatever, when the police are finding it, they show a shot of the girl in the back seat of the car.
so that's where I was going with this. So they were making out in the back seat.
Oh,
She gets pulled out. Her head gets pulled out of the whatever
Window,
side
right.
of the back seat, slashed. On the other side of the car, the guy gets out, gets into the driver's seat,
and fumbles with the keys.
tries to get away, gets killed.
Are you actually trying to make sense of this movie?
I'm sorry, are you defending this movie? Clippy just came up. Were you trying to defend Harvest of Fear?
I can help with
Do
that.
you need help? I can't help. Clippy just quit. Anyway, yeah, it was so poorly executed, that whole scene, as to and like,
murder is confusing.
Well, I just couldn't figure out. They must not have had that girl for coverage day, because it was just so weird to just see bloody hair attached to nothing, and it didn't.
It wasn't her.
It was
just a wig.
It was
or
really
whatever.
bizarre.
Let's talk about some other weird choices in this movie.
Okay.
So we cut to the next scene where people are getting killed, and it's help me out. What is going on? We have several group of teenagers. We have one group that has like a rental house.
I think they're all staying in the same house. They're staying in a rental house.
But it looks like a building that has hallways, kind of like a dorm.
Oh, you mean like a retirement center where they clearly shot the... I don't think that was supposed to be the same place.
Okay.
I felt like they rented a little house, and then you go to the harvest party, because this town is famous for their harvest party.
So we're to assume the harvest party is taking place at the retirement
center with sad teal carpet and a couple corn stalks taped up. Because what else do college students love for their break is to hang out in a retirement center in a really small town?
That looked like a really depressing party.
It was so sad.
Really?
So sad. And the hallway was like the least threatening hallway, because they cut to the longest hallway in the world, and it has like the rails on the side for people that might have trouble walking and stuff like that. And so yeah, a whole group of kids show up because it's their weekend, and that's what the town is bracing for. Is all of these? They treat it like Mardi Gras, except we see 6 kids show up.
And then so one of the kids who's dressed up at the Halloween party or the harvest party as a doctor, he gets killed in the hallway, and they show his dead body, and the camera pans up to the men's room sign.
For like a second.
Because
wait,
oh come on,
Mark, are you defending?
Mark, are you a producer of Harvest of Fear?
Do you remember why he was in the hallway?
Well, he went. He
was he going to the bathroom?
He was looking for the men's room,
right, to go throw up or something like that.
So, is the movie to imply that if he had only made it inside the door, he wouldn't have been murdered?
No, he finally found it
in death.
Like
was that a joke? No, like in the movie where they try.
I think it was.
Like
ironic.
The movie was winking at us.
Right, because he went down the hallway to look for the bathroom, and he asked the guy in the mask.
The movie was winking at us, not with us.
Hey, where's the men's room? And then he started charging at him, and so he runs, gets stabbed, dies at the foot of the men's room that he was looking for in the first place.
I did not get that.
Wow, that is deep, Mark.
It's really a Wizard of Oz tale there, The ruby slippers. The ruby slippers were always on your.
There's no place like the men's room. But yeah, so that's what I. The resulting Harvest Festival was so dumb. And the whole setup of the movie is college kids come here for this party. Right. And they're all drinking out of there's like 20 people there, maybe.
It kind of feels like a parody of a movie.
It really did. It's like the old people were like, bingo's at 7, wrap it up. Who are these kids? But yeah, I got the impression that they were just staying in that house, which is weird because it seemed like that house was in a neighborhood, but also every time when the kids stepped outside, they were in the middle of the forest. So I couldn't quite figure out the geography of what was happening in this town.
So what do you think was the motivation for the killings?
With spoilers?
Yeah, let's just go full on spoilers. That's not that anyone cares.
I know. Well, yeah, everyone gets knocked off one by one. The movie makes it look. Mark, you seem to understand this movie.
Okay, so of all
5 stars
of all of the murders, there's the only one that doesn't happen during sex is the doctor dressed up guy in the hallway.
That's not true. The old redneck also gets killed towards the end.
Old redneck.
Oh, and
Which breaks the combo because this is
and
all
his son.
and his son, because like the whole setup was all these teenagers are getting killed, and then the old guy gets killed and his son.
Oh yeah.
So most of them are right when
I was thinking like a guy with a small penis or something.
Right.
something.
Well, and that's
Like-
the setup for most of the horror movies, is that the virgins stay alive, the whores who have sex are the ones that
Right.
get killed. But this movie forgets that it was doing that, and it just like starts killing everyone.
So ultimately, I think it's just there's a serial killer, and it's genetic.
So we are led to believe that the killer is the current
Doc
town
Carpenter.
coroner.
Who worked with the dad of Smirky McBro,
Yeah, and
the intern, Billy, the intern.
and Billy, his theory that he tells to the audience is that he's the doctor or the coroner is making these killings so that he has more work and he can put more bodies on his resume and then he can get a better job. Is that right?
It is, and
Is it?
Yeah, he goes because his rival back in the day was Billy's dad.
Right.
Billy's dad got a good job out in another town, and Doc Carpenter was left there in little town without being able to get the big job because he didn't have enough experience.
Okay. I just would disagree.
That's what the movie says.
That's what the movie told
The
us.
movie also doesn't mention anything about it, because I was like, oh, maybe it is the numbers thing. We'll get to look at so many bodies. I'll be rich. I'll be the choice coroner,
Right.
or whatever. But then, what does this have to do with 20 years ago at the Harvest Festival? Do they have a Harvest Festival every year? Does it matter how many people you're doing autopsies on? So I'll play the very end after it's revealed that Bro Billy is the killer the whole time. He's talking with his father, who may as well be Emperor Palpatine with his voice. They play at the beginning to him like, oh, this is the bad guy. Because he's like, join me.
Do you
Together we can rule the coroner's office.
Do you think that was Kurt Hansen's voice on the phone? Because it sounded like a different actor almost.
I don't know. So let's listen to this part here. So the bro calls his dad after he frames the doctor.
You didn't leave anything behind.
I did everything right down to the last detail. Everything else just seemed to fall into place. Oh, you should have seen them eat about Dad. They thought they were solving this thing, and I just led them right along.
Just like I did it 20 years ago. Sounds like you're finally ready to work alongside me.
Like father, like son.
And he's looking at the knife he used in all the killings, and this is in the trailer. Did you guys watch the trailer? The end of the trailer,
No.
he is holding the knife and says, like father, like son. Like,
Spoilers.
I guess. But none of that implies they're doing it to get ahead. This implies, like, oh, good, every 20 years we'll be serial killers together.
Right.
And
Yeah, there's no motivation for the
it really falls apart, because we also learn that so Billy moves to town, falls in love with the girl who helps at the coroner's office, Stacy. Stacy's ex-boyfriend is the local cop, and there's some tension there because they broke up. So Stacy and Billy start dating or hanging out or whatever. It turns out that Stacy's brother used to date the local cop's sister. Right?
Yeah.
And they both went up to Makeout Hill and
Right.
got murdered. And the local cop was the last one to see him. So there's all this mystery. Was that 20 years ago? Was that a
No,
separate case of serial killers coming to this small town?
That never went anywhere, and it may have just been a red herring. They may have wanted you to think that it was a serial killer, and that was also setting up the red herring of that police officer. But I think it probably in reality was just an accident, and they died by getting drunk and falling off a cliff.
Falling off a cliff. So This movie is so dumb.
I truly think there is no motivation for the actual killer, though. For Billy and his father, why are they killing?
They never reveal.
I think they're killing just for the sheer of killing, which is not enough for a movie to stand on.
Well, especially since, okay, so this is a low-budget horror movie. You come to see some really great kills. You know, the story doesn't, like, who cares about the story? Who cares what Michael Myers' motivation? Like, you know, whatever. We just want to see stock people. Every single person in this movie gets killed by having their throat slit.
That's, yeah.
Well, a couple get stabbed, sort of. But the rest of them all die exactly the same way.
And they all have like the blood on the knife, and then it's almost like they're drawing the blood like a marker on their throats.
Against the neck, because that's the only little prosthetic they could afford was the little throat. They did go to, and that's the other thing too. All the teenagers in this movie, there's a whole scene where, and this is a little bit later, so I'll get to that later. But all of these murders are being discussed in this small town. Now, at one point at the crazy city hall meeting press conference where there's like 6 teenagers and like 2 adults that show up to the city.
Oh, yeah, and we see the mayor there.
He says 9 people have been killed. Now, if 9 people in Portland have been offed by a serial killer, like everything would shut down. The FBI would. This is a small town who now twice has experienced
like 1/3 of the town has been killed.
I mean, I lived in Southern California when the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez was around, and I was terrified living in Southern California, not like down the street in Estacada.
At that point in the movie, all 9 were, I think, teenagers, college students, and
that's like a generation
killed while they were humping outside, and they kept doing that.
That's what I was gonna say. So the new college students that come up had this whole discussion that I'll play later about should we stay? All these people are dying. And they're like, well, I guess we could stay together.
Oh, we already paid for the cabin.
We already paid for the cabin. Which is a great excuse for staying where serial killers are killing teenagers.
I'm sure the cops will look.
They're on there. They're looking right now.
They're looking right now.
But then they all immediately wander into the woods and then separate. Every single one of them. One of them goes to
keep you safe. I'll keep you safe. Wait right here. I'll be back in a little bit.
I forgot my lighter at the barbecue.
Now, the way that this movie treats kind of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, did it feel kind of like oddly conservative to you? Like when they had that discussion about like getting high, and then the people who are drinking and having sex, it just kind of the message there. It was
well, and two of the people at the college party said no to pot, which I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess not very realistic, but I was like, okay, they didn't treat them like pariahs, so just say no if you want.
And the girl that does smoke weed and then gets killed, part of the moment was her confusion and everything's blurry and
right.
Yeah,
and they do when the one couple goes, they're at a house party. They're not at the Harvest Festival. They're just at a little house party that they're having, all the college kids. They go to get more beer, which apparently they keep 3 houses down because they're like, let's walk out to this barn in the middle of nowhere to get the beer for the party. And they both go for a literal roll in the hay.
I did like that all of the beer in this movie was McTarnahan's.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, which is Portland Brewing.
And they also, in the credits, thanked Buffalo Gap. Have you guys ever been to Buffalo Gap?
Oh, yeah.
They do one scene where they're at like a bar or restaurant or something like that.
Was that the Buffalo Gap?
But I've never been there. All I know is our friend Sean's dad started that. And so, but they did thank them. Maybe they catered for them or something.
I was thinking of the Buffalo Exchange.
Buffalo Exchange.
I was like, oh, that must be where they got their costumes. No, the Buffalo Gap. That's
so maybe
Nick Adam, right?
Oh, that's exactly the Buffalo Gap.
Which one?
Oh,
yeah.
That's totally the Buffalo Gap.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Oh, neat. Well,
so
Sean,
we now have 2 locations in Portland in this
there
movie.
we go. I did wonder because I've never been inside. This is where Smirk is on a date with Stacy and asks what happened 20 years ago, and she's telling the story, like this horrifying story about all these people in her hometown getting killed, and he is just smirking his way through listening to that like it's the...
That scene really bothered me because it he was like, this is what happened 20 years ago, and then it kind of blurs and fades to the next scene, insinuating this is a flashback, and this is like what happened 20 years ago. But it cuts to I think the house party where they're having the same conversation, and they're like, "Don't you know what happened 20 years ago?" And then the same thing happens. It kind of fades out, and then it goes to the sheriff's station where now 3 people in a row are having the same conversation, and each time you think it's going to be a flashback and we're going to actually find out what happened 20 years ago, but they just keep cutting to somebody else
telling the same story. I did think that was a bold choice for it was not only to have 3 fading in between 3 different people telling the backstory, which I suppose could work in a way, but the guy, one of the kids at the party who's telling is the worst actor of all time. I'm like, this is the part of the movie you kind of want to nail the tone of this one, but they I did want to listen to, let's see.
Can I talk about the other editing choice that really bothered me is when the sheriff was using the radio?
Yes, and the cuts between the
so yeah, each time he triggered the radio, you know, the
right.
classic like
and they would cut the video.
It was like a hard cut to a white screen.
Well, yeah, it was like
a flash of light,
and so which usually gives an impression of like you've been doing this a long time, like this was a compressed 2 hours,
like a mini montage,
right?
But clearly, like there was no cut in the film because the guy just was like, "Are you there? Are you there?" And they were
and each time that sound effect, you get just a white flash for really no reason.
So this is after the couple that went to the barn to go have their roll in the hay, which they're like, "Oh, let's roll." Like people are already getting killed right here. And their idea of like a sexy time in the barn is to role play being serial killer and victim, which I guess another but then they don't. They just start making out. Like there was no. But then they all go back.
I think they transition to cowboy role play.
All I can think of is how pokey that hay really. Have you ever sat on a bale of hay like against bare skin? It's terrible. But all the kids are discussing whether or not to stay at the house here.
Hey, Joey. So what's up, Joey? Did the cops say anything?
They don't have a clue. I still think it's a suicide.
Shit, suicide, Joey? The guy had a fucking pitchfork through his chest.
I don't want to stay.
Okay, everyone relax. Big costume bash at the lodges tonight. I think we should go. We'll get our minds off this thing.
What the hell's wrong with you people? People are dead. Our friends are dead.
Look, the cops will keep an eye on us and this house. If
sounds like a high school play.
That's enough out of you.
They were here last night.
What good did that do? That silver guy was in the bedroom with Cindy all night long, and that other cop just disappeared.
Well, now they'll have their eyes open a little wider. Let's just stay together. Bunch of people from
There's a lawnmower in the background.
There is. More than you tonight.
Well, that means we are now the
targets. Oh, and then it left because they cut to a different shot.
Isn't that supposed to be at night?
No, this is during the day.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they had this discussion. Well, we already paid for the place. Even though our friends are getting murdered, we'll just stay here and continue to wander into the forest alone.
Oops.
The other thing that I thought was so dumb was, okay, we're in the small town again. Clearly, a lot of people are getting killed. The sheriffs here are so nonplussed, which I guess is the wrong. You're supposed to say plussed or whatever. Now I always had that in my head. They are so unbothered by what's happening. They're like, oh, non-bothered. When they find the guy in the barn that got stuck with a pitchfork, they're like, oh, he got forked up. I'm like, this, like, even the most hardened New York cop in the wave of, like, serial killers aren't making, like, glib one-liners. You guys are small-town cops. Everyone you know is getting murdered, and you're just yucking up a storm.
Speaking of one-liners, did anyone notice in one of the love scenes where the girl says something about, like, better put your raincoat on?
Yeah.
And then he says, can we just use the luck method?
Did he say that?
I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that, but I did hear
never heard someone say the luck
method.
Oh.
Man. Yeah, they pan up to the men's restroom sign. Right after I wrote, you can't have a scary scene in a retirement center hallway, which was inexplicably foggy.
And with the Matrix soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to find, because I did, to its credit, I did think the music, like the score of this movie, was pretty decent.
Except for the moments.
Except for those moments, which they dropped about halfway through because I noticed that they stopped doing it. But I'm going to get through Here's the poor naked lady running, but they cut to this music behind it. She stands there and stand there screaming, never putting her top on. So it's decent music. Come on. Oh, maybe this is where they did a decent one.
Is this at the beginning?
This is at the beginning.
I thought that was one where they went
I thought
techno.
so too. Oh, her poor back. That's where he tries to kill her with a guitar for some reason.
Right?
Well,
I had a knife. Then he
consistently would use objects just laying around to try and kill people.
And they use that pitchfork, which I guess that's kind of interesting, but they wander into this barn where you can use all sorts of really cool, like, old farm tools or equipment or something, and he just strangles her with an extension cord. Like, that was our big exciting kill. It was so dumb.
So what'd you think of this movie, Tom?
I've got one comment about the overall quality of the actual DVD.
Oh, yeah?
So we did get this movie from Movie Madness. It's not available to stream anywhere. You can still buy it from Amazon if you want. But the DVD itself, it was really interesting. Printed, it had, the title of the movie and like the poster printed on the cover of the DVD. But then it also had a street date printed on the actual disc.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it said like street date something, and then wide release, and it was like a week later.
So then that's a screener copy that they send to, because I'll find VHS boxes like you'll instead of the normal picture on the back, it's like, we made this much money, and here's the promotion that we're doing, and your store will be the hit of the neighborhood, or whatever. Oh, that's funny.
So, and then another interesting thing about this DVD, it was so poor quality, the mastering, I guess, that it was widescreen, but it was a kind of widescreen where the black bars were actually put into the image.
Just added to.
So, if you watch it on a widescreen TV, you now have black bars all the way around the image on all four sides.
On all four sides.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to see if this kill has that music. Oh, this is the car one. I don't think the car one. How is it that I'm not finding any of it this time?
Well, it's definitely the retirement home.
Okay.
I read on IMDb that someone left. Oh, that was funny. On IMDb, the plot summary is written by the director.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Could you just tell, or that's like...
No, it said his name. I was like, plot summary by Ted Pfeiffer.
He didn't need his brother for that for that one. They didn't need to combo.
Well, not the director. I guess he was the writer. But
all right, so here's him in the hallway here.
Oh, yeah.
For the least exciting chase down a retirement center hallway.
Yeah, so it goes from like traditional horror movie music.
Yeah, like the earlier scene. Which
And then
like, oh, that's
for
decent.
most of the kills, they cut over to that music.
It's so weird, but I did like the rest of the music, which I think was written just for this movie. You know what was driving me crazy? When they went to the cafe a couple times, which maybe was Buffalo Gap. Well, now I'll have to ask our friend Sean, but they had the same dishes as I did growing up. That had
the yellow trim.
The yellow
white
trim with like
cups.
the butterfly, whatever, all the way around the edge.
So I don't think that
was at the cafe in town.
That was the cafe in town, which wasn't the Buffalo Gap. So
what they also did at this cafe in town, after I forget which murders, the cops are getting together again and talking over the case. They are in a double booth. So not a booth against the wall.
Right.
There's two booths, and there were people on the inside.
Yeah.
In between them and the wall that were not part of the group. They were
I don't
just
think they
there.
were against the wall.
They were against the wall.
No.
Yes. Ooh.
No, Todd's wrong, I think.
Oh.
Todd's totally wrong on this one.
I was so bothered by that. Here they are. Hold on.
I mean,
just skip past it.
It was a booth. It was like a center aisle booth, and most of the time you would have a dividing wall between the people eating. But in this particular restaurant, there was just no dividing wall, so you were just sitting.
Okay, you're both wrong. That's okay.
Todd's wrong.
No, look. So they're sitting at 2 booths next to each other. There is a wall on the one side.
It's not a wall.
It's
That's
a walkway. Well, it's like a lattice. It's like a bamboo wall pushed up against those seats, and then there's
it's not pushed up against the seats. There's room for them to walk outside. They could get out of their booth if they wanted to.
All right, I'm gonna find the other angle. It was driving me crazy.
All right, so here's another gem from IMDb. If you look at the reviews for this movie, they're all like 1, 2 stars, what you would expect, except for this one review, and this one feels like a plant. And this is another reason why it just kind of feels oddly conservative. There's this one line, listen to this. I really liked the Bowie knife-wielding hillbilly. Where did they ever get someone like that to play this part, LOL? This movie was a lot of fun to watch. Very entertaining. I sure appreciated the low amount of foul language you see so much of in today's movies.
Weird. But that was the director's mom. The 2-minute extended boob sequence.
And then the next sentence, it goes on, maybe because the setting was a small town and people just speak more respectful in those places.
No, they don't. No.
That's weird. So you don't think that wall is up against the...
No.
I don't know. Further investigation will be had.
Let's go to Esticate.
Let's go. I'm just going to stop this podcast now. Going to the
this review is just like a Trump tweet. Let's just unpack all of the falsehoods. Listen, wonderful surprise ending, great cast all around. It really nailed the editing for surprising effects. Some of the scenes were similar to other slasher movies, yet there was more of a surprising acting from this group of talent. This movie tells a story just the right way. Good luck to all the talent involved.
Sad.
Wrong. There was another directing thing that he kept doing, and that was people delivering their lines straight into camera. At one point, we have Stacy and her ex-boyfriend cop, and they're having an argument, and they're both shouting directly into the camera.
Yeah, and it's like the point of view from the other person.
Their point of view. Now, usually use like a point of view thing like that to establish something or to get you in the mind of that character, but they're just going back and forth, and it was so awkward.
Jarring,
2 close-ups of people
weird.
staring into the camera.
It was like a first-person shot, reverse shot.
It was awful. The other thing, oh my gosh, so as all the murders are ramping, I really hated this movie. As the murders are ramping up, more and more people are getting killed. We get a fake out where someone's, one of the teenagers or college students is in bed. She has a scary dream and wakes up and goes to splash cold water on her face and gets back into bed. And surprise, the killer was in bed with her the whole time somehow. The next day, the cops come in to view it, to view the bodies. The cop walks into the room, sees the body, and we see him with flashbacks superimposed over him.
Him being the killer?
No, just scenes of the other crimes that he was not there for. He is having a flashback to something he was not involved in. This is the only time we're getting flashbacks. And through a character that...
I don't remember that.
I do.
It was right after they all left that cafe booth. No, it wasn't. I'll find it here. Because it didn't make any sense to have flashbacks that we'd never had before through a character that
wasn't there
either.
Are you talking about the sheriff's deputy?
Yeah, hold on, I'll find it here. Go on without me.
Sean Scott, what was his name?
Billy?
No, Billy's nemesis.
I think it might have been Sean.
Oh.
Sean.
Okay, here we go. Oh, hold on. Okay.
I'm in the bedroom.
So he walks over to look at the bodies in the bedroom. He's in the doorway.
So it's the sheriff.
Yeah. To all of the other killings.
My last day as sheriff.
To the ones in the forest that no one was around for.
Maybe you watched the movie.
He had been watching dailies.
Well, you guys have not. Do you have anything else before we wrap this up, Todd?
Oh,
because
I'm on page 5 of 6, and this is like usually I'll just keep comments that kind of just are through line of the story, and then I'll star things on the side that I really want to talk about, and everything is getting to the point where everything is just double stars and questions. That's what I was having the problem with, a double booth against the wall, the flashbacks, the smirk. So at one point, the smirky kid gets taken into the cop's office to be questioned. Billy gets questioned by the ex-boyfriend because they're trying to figure out if he did it. During the talk, the sheriff gets a phone call and says, "Oh, Billy, you're free to go."
That was the sheriff
saying what?
Saying
let him go.
We don't have enough evidence
on him.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah.
Like they didn't discover another body, or they didn't.
No. That's all.
That's it, Todd.
I guess. Anyway, well then, I don't. Then they kill the old man. I don't. Well, maybe I'll just be. No, there's one more thing. Okay,
one more thing.
Get it out now, because we're never talking about this movie
again. The sheriff of the town keeps getting calls from someone, I wasn't clear, maybe the retired sheriff, and they keep asking each other, who was the 25th president of the United States?
Oh, no, that was
the old guy.
A phone call, yeah, with cryptic old man.
It happened like 3 or 4 times.
No, it only happened once.
But
I swear it happened twice, because it felt like they set it up once, and then at the end they were trying to pay something off.
They had at least 2 phone calls, but they only mentioned McKinley once, but then later the sheriff asked somebody else, "Hey, who was the 25th president
of the United States?"
And then he said William McKinley.
But why is this happening?
I didn't understand. The only thing I could think of is like Billy. Maybe the name William and Billy. Billy was the actual killer.
Isn't that the character's name, William McKinley?
Oh, I don't know what his last name was.
Oh, was it?
Let's consult IMDb.
I don't think this movie worked hard enough to give them last names.
Yeah,
let's be honest. But yeah, then at the end it was just a bunch of
Billy McKinley.
Oh, so the old man knew the whole time and just didn't tell the police.
Yeah, and he ended up getting killed. Why would he not?
He has no motivation to. That's what this movie does, though, is like sets people up.
Literally, his son is incarcerated,
and with the knowledge he has currently,
could free his own
son, and he doesn't.
Yeah,
and then he gets killed.
I hate you, movie.
Did you hate it? I hated it the most when I sat through it, and then they had that little piece at the end where he has a conversation with his dad on the phone for their quote-unquote motivation, and then smirking Billy picks up Stacy in a car, looks directly into the camera, smirks, and then like goes about getting into the car, like breaks fourth wall to smirk at us once again. And then like continues on.
I got away with it.
It felt punitive at that point.
I got away with it.
So I'm going back right now, and I'm seeing if this is true. I'm looking at all the movies we've watched so far, and I'm seeing if I truly hate this movie the most. And
Mark's already on record for loving this movie more than any other movie we've ever watched.
No, not any other movie we've ever watched.
This is your favorite movie.
This is my favorite movie.
It's almost at the bottom. I would say Breaking In is worse. I would say all of the Halloween Town sequels are worse. Maybe Extraordinary Measures.
Extraordinary Measures is really at the bottom of my list.
This one wasn't.
And I love Brendan Fraser.
If you're a fan of bad movies, there are definitely some stuff to chuckle at.
And I did like the first viewing was okay. It was okay. I mean, it was boring since all the kills were boring. But it was the second time around that I really hated it. But I think if people were just wanting to watch a stupid fun horror movie together,
just watch it once.
Now there's an idea.
And make sure your eyes are shut.
I wish I could find an example of one of the songs that played, because the songs at the end of this are credited to, I think.
Was it Goodman or Pfeiffer they were credited to?
Let me see here. I'll turn my volume off.
It was either the writer or the director.
Yeah, he had 3 songs written by Brad Goodman.
So that's the director.
And performed by the Goodman brothers.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, interesting. So we have the Pfeiffer brothers, and now we have the Goodman brothers.
Which maybe it was for a different movie I was looking at, but I thought maybe one of those was a pseudonym. but maybe I'm wrong. I thought
Well-
maybe Brad Goodman was a pseudonym for.
You guys haven't mentioned it yet, so I'm assuming that means you did not discover this fact like I did. There is a big twist to this whole discussion.
Okay.
There is a sequel to this movie.
Oh, no.
I did see that now
No.
that you mentioned that.
It is called Path of Evil. And if
There
it-
might even be like an unofficial third one because
Oh, really?
when I was looking at the director's IMDb page, it looked like there was 3 of them that looked similar, and I don't know if that's just to package them together or not. But
Well, the Path of Evil is definitely a sequel. It's got the same cast playing the same characters.
wow,
So I guess we can save that for next Halloween. Something to look
Yes.
forward to all year.
I wonder if it's filmed in Portland.
It did say Portland. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was filmed in Portland.
Is that on our list?
It is on our.
It
It,
will be
happened to-
now.
it was on our list, but I don't think any of us knew that it was a sequel to this movie.
right? Oh, okay.
But obviously, if they
Good
made
thing
it,
we didn't watch that one first. We would have been lost.
that's a good point.
Or maybe it's a prequel. Maybe it's a story of
Could
what
be
happened
the
20 years
origin
ago.
story.
So a couple things in the credits here. It thanks the city of Lake Oswego too. I think maybe some of the lake shots were just Lake Oswego.
Oh, that must have been Lake Oswego.
Tryon State Park, the residents of Whispering Pines Retirement Village.
Did you read the
Yes.
trivia on IMDb?
I didn't.
It said that there was a snowstorm during the filming of the movie, and the crew, instead of staying in Portland and making the commute, the retirement center volunteered to let them stay at the retirement center.
Oh wow!
And everyone at the retirement center referred to everyone as the Hollywoods.
the Hollywoods.
The Hollywoods.
Oh, that's so great.
And that I think
Yes.
that trivia was left by the director.
They do thank McTarnahan Beer and Buffalo Gap as well. That's so funny.
Yeah. So
Wow.
decent amount of more obscure locations in this movie. You know,
Yeah, that was nice to see all the,
I don't think
the
we'll-
outlying areas.
probably not going to get another movie shot in Aurora or Estacada.
except for the sequel.
Oh, I do want to call out there was a really interesting looking building that was the sheriff's station, and that was actually Estacada City Hall.
Wait, say that again.
The sheriff's station
Oh yeah.
is Estacada City Hall.
Oh, funny.
It's
They
the,
did, and I don't know if this was still on the Clackamas Sheriff uniform, but the star badge they had was such a rounded, chunky star. Have you ever seen that meme that's like a poorly drawn star and it says "I tried" or whatever, and it's just like all done in MS Paint or whatever? Every time I saw the badge, it looked like that because it was like this weirdly rounded, like child's star.
I didn't notice that.
Even like the sheriff's outfit was like generic, straight out of Party City County Sheriff.
Yeah.
And
You know what reminded me of, Brian, is Suburban Sasquatch. Do you remember the sheriff's costumes in that, which was just like brown tape over like some
Yes,
shirt,
a
that they
shirt.
found? These were
Uh-huh.
the same ones, although this one at least had some badges on it. So,
That's funny.
all right, well, Harvest of Fear. We have nothing to fear except Harvest of Fear itself, and that is now over. So,
I can only recommend it if you're into bad movies for curiosity's sake.
yeah, that were filmed in Estacada. all of those
right.
all of those specifications, then this is the movie for you. So
Joining the Estacada City Council and want to get a little history about their.
Oh, I know. This movie is the equivalent to. Okay, so here's an analogy. Vernonia Incident is to Vernonia as Harvest of Fear is to Estacada.
nice. Well, except it wasn't
Except
local hero did
And
not make the movie
not
at
direct it.
Estacada.
and they never mention Oregon or Estacada or
They did say Clackamas County, but I don't think they ever said.
And they did show the close up of the guy's driver's license.
Right,
It was
which
an
is
Oregon
Oregon.
driver's license.
Dang it.
Obviously, it was supposed to be Devil's Lake.
Oh yeah, that's
Devil's
right. The
Lake.
Devil's Lake. Oh, they did have. Maybe that's.
I really wish it would have ended with the narrator saying, "Y'all come back now." You hear?
It just about did, and maybe that's what I'll play us out to the end here. Is that so? We got that clunky VO at the beginning that lays out the whole movie. There he is, winking and smirking at me again. So we'll take you out with the VO at the end of the movie then, and whatever plays over the credits. Any other last thoughts?
We'll see everybody at the Portland Podcast Festival.
Yes.
Indeed.
put on by Fun Employment Radio, where you can also hear this show as well as the Mark and Toddcast. Brian, if people want to find out about the Unipiper, where can they go?
Check me out at unipiper.com. In just about a week's time, we'll be selling off my stolen T-shirts.
Oh, yes, that's right. With all the profits going to Street Roots.
Yeah.
So check out for that. We will catch you guys later. Thank you for listening.
Devil's Lake. A small town not unlike many others. A small town with a past, a present, and a hope for a future.
Rare Rabbit done got himself into a pickle. This is so 2004.
It really is.